Hello, second grade, and welcome to the reading portion of your schoolwork. Again, we will be breaking this into day 1A, day 1B. This time I'll be releasing videos that will come out every other day, so you'll just pause the video as you'll break up the questions for different parts of the day. So here we go. As a reminder, we still expect you to be reading at home. There's lots of resources you can use. Of course, Epic allows you to log in just like you would during school time, during school hours, and I can see you on there and doing your work, so that's a great way to check in. Also, many of you like those Storyline Online videos. That's another great way to listen to stories. If you go to YouTube and look at Storyline Online, you can also listen to those. Your local library has access through Hoopla, and you can download books from there. So check with your family, and they may be able to log you in there, use their library card, and get you some books. And also recently in the news, they talked about audible.com is offering free books to kids to listen to during this time online. So that's another resource that you can use. Parents, just a reminder, we do expect some read aloud time with your child. You should have a little extra time for doing that, hopefully. And so again, at least 15 to 20 minutes a day, probably a little bit more nowadays since they're not getting the amount of reading during school time. So things you could discuss if the book is fiction or nonfiction. Ask them to retell what happened in the book. Great ways to tell it across 5 fingers, or you can use 10 fingers, or things at home like beans or jelly beans or toy cars, having them slide for each thing that they can remember in order. Ask them to tell about their favorite part. Ask them to make a connection. So one thing that we've talked about during school time is making a text-to-self connection. So maybe the book reminds them of something that they did. A text-to-text. Maybe that reminds them of another book that was similar that you guys have worked on. Hey, this is how they're the same. Or text-to-world. If they have another connection, something else that it reminds them of that's not a book or it's not something that they did, that would be a text-to-world connection. All right, in your reading packets today, our story is an adventure in Africa. And so again, we like to do a little bit of previewing beforehand. So you might want to think in your head about what kind of animals might you see if you go to Africa. Okay, make some predictions about what would happen if you went on a trip to Africa. Today, you'll be able to do that reading. It's in your packet. Again, you can do it on your own, or you could spend that extra time with an adult at your house talking and discussing about what's happening in the book today. Okay? When you're all done with the book or done with the reading for today, you'll hit pause and you'll take some time to answer the questions. Okay? So I want you to read first, and then we're going to tell you about the questions. So you can hit unpause and hit play, and so then we'll be ready for some questions. All right, welcome back again. Your packet should look something like this, okay? And hopefully you did a great job reading through there, hopefully finding some of those things that we've been working on in phonics that you can find examples as you're reading, okay? Today, your assignment is to complete the first 5 questions. Tomorrow we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the next questions that go with it. So when you're reading and doing your questions at home, make sure you're going back to the text. You're going back to find out where that answer is. If you're the adult at home, ask them, where did you find that answer? Make sure that they're not just giving you a quick guess on the answer, but see if they have some evidence that supports their answer, because they should be going back and forth to the text. All right, so again, on our worksheet for today, today's work is just the first 5 questions. Now, because you're logging in, we'll give you help with a free answer today and help you out with a question. So number 4, how did Kevin's parents most likely feel during the trip to Africa? And so you would want to be able to go back to your text. And so this is where it's important. You'd want to go back to what you were doing and find something that helps support your answer. Here he's asking, what if we get close to a lion, he asked. "Oh, darling," she said, "like I told you, nothing will happen to us if you listen to what our guide says." So that question for number 4 says, how did Kevin's parents most likely feel during the trip to Africa? Kevin's parents were bored during the trip to Africa? Definitely not going to be boring. Okay. Letter B, Kevin's parents were afraid during the trip to Africa. When she says, "Oh, darling," like I told you, nothing will happen. That doesn't sound like somebody that's afraid. So you would want to go with letter C. Kevin's parents were not afraid during the trip to Africa. So by using that text, that can help you to find your answers. So we'll scroll back down here for us. So make sure you do all 5 questions all the way to here. Then we'll want you to go ahead and stop. Okay? Because it's important to read and reread. By breaking up the story, this helps your child to hear the story again, hopefully get a little deeper understanding. So make sure that you please pause the video, come back tomorrow, and you can come right back to this spot, and we're going to stop for today. All right, we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow would be March 31st, which would be a Tuesday, and we'll check back in. All right, happy Tuesday and welcome back. This is reading day 1B. So this is the second part of our reading. Again, we expect you to be reading at home, hopefully logging into Epic so I can see some of those minutes working on Epic, along with using some of the resources for reading along the way that we talked about yesterday. Again, as you're reading each day, please have this discussion time with your child. Just don't ask them to go read and then just be done with the reading. But the comprehension is what we really need to grow and improve. So make sure you're having those conversations, talking about connections, talking about favorite parts, asking them to retell what happened. Okay. Again, we're going to come back to our story and an adventure in Africa. And so take this time to pause the video again, go back and reread, because we want to build up fluency when we're reading. So you want to make it sound smooth as you're reading. And so this would give you a little bit of extra practice. When you're done with that, we'll come back and do some work on questions. So just go ahead and pause the video and then come back to us. All right, if you paused that video and came back, we want to know what happened, right? Your understanding of the story should be a little bit deeper this time. And so now we're going to come back to our questions. And yesterday you did questions 1 through 5. Today we're going to work on questions 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Don't forget 10 is on the back side of the page, so it's easy to miss on there. All right. And so again, because you logged in today, we'll give you help on the one question and give you an example of how we can do that. Okay. So number 6 says, read the following sentences. During a safari, you can see lions and zebras living free instead of cooped up in a zoo. So our question for number 6 asks, what does the phrase cooped up most nearly mean? Does it mean yelled at, released in the wild, or C, kept in a closed space? Okay. So sometimes when we get a question like this, we want to think back to something we know. So some of you may have heard, hey, I've been cooped up in my house for days. What would that mean? Does it mean you're yelled at in your house for days? Does it mean you're released in the wild for days, or kept in a closed space? Yes, if you've been inside, you have been cooped up in a closed space for days. All right, so cooped up most likely means kept in a closed space. So that's your free answer of the day, letter C. Your job is to do the rest of the questions on your own. When you get down to the bottom questions, you'll notice that it has some lines for complete answers. Make sure your writing's neat. This is a great time to tap out those letter sounds, working on letter formation, all those things also as you're answering these questions, okay? So make sure you do all 10, including that one on the back. Again, how would Kevin react if he saw a lion up close on the safari? use evidence from the story. So you have to give us those examples. So parents, make sure they're going back and checking the story for examples and evidence that will help them. Okay. All right, good job. You have completed day 1 of the packet, both 1A and 1B. We will come back tomorrow with a new reading for you, and we look forward to seeing you. Keep up the good work. Keep reading at home.